What is the most you've ever enjoyed alcohol? Like that first sip.
Oh, that reminds me of Tom Waits' quote. I don't want another drink, I just want that last one again.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
That's profound. Usually our openings are stupid.
How to drink whiskey.
All right, we're back again with the Vice Chancellor and the co-founder of the Whiskey Marketing School at the Wizard Academy, Daniel Whittington. Thank you very much, sir.
It is my pleasure, sir.
It's our pleasure. Are you kidding? We're the ones drinking. This is great. All right, we've learned the basics of making whiskey. We've learned how to order whiskey, but I don't know how to drink whiskey and get the most out of it.
Okay, well,
This is a glass. That's
This is whiskey. Whiskey goes in the glass and it goes in the bag.
couple of steps.
forgot to take the top off. Damn it! I missed a step. Rookie maneuver. Okay, bad news is what we're about to do is gonna make you look like snobs. The good news is you're about to start your journey of becoming a true whiskey expert.
I'm in.
Are you in?
Sign me up, boss.
I'm in.
We're only gonna do 2 whiskeys. I know I spoiled you with dozens of whiskeys previously. We're gonna do 2. We're gonna do an Irish whiskey, a green spot, and we're gonna do Longmorn 16. This is a Scottish single malt from Speyside, S-P-E-Y-S-I-D-E. Now, remember we said subjective reality with the shrimp cocktails?
Yeah.
And what's your favorite food?
I like shrimp cocktail.
Okay, well, I've had a shrimp cocktail. You're wrong.
Okay. That's a cheap way to feel superior to someone else.
Yes, exactly. So there's 2 things about drinking whiskey. And the first is glassware. And it really does matter. It makes a difference. Now, it doesn't matter as in it's more important, but it makes a difference. We're all talking about chemistry and physiology. So a big wide open glass lets all the alcohol vapors escape out past you, and right, this is why wine glasses matter. Now, I like these Glencairns, but any glass that has a vague tulip shape is helpful. Now what this does is it captures the whiskey down here and you have a high proof beverage, right? And so you're gonna have a lot more evaporation than you would in a wine.
So the moment you pour it out, it starts evaporating
Instantly.
and starts
If you leave a glass of neat whiskey out in a room for 30 minutes, it'll taste watered down. Now, okay, I am gonna tell you, I snuck in one of my all-time favorite single malt scotches. There's a reason for it, and you'll recognize it when you try it, but I stumbled onto this whiskey.
There's a reason the bottle is mostly empty.
I know, right? It has a flavor profile that I have found completely unique in Scottish whiskey, and I'll describe it to you and then let you experience it. But first, let's talk about smelling whiskey.
So first of all, this is a Scotch because it's made in Scotland.
Yeah, remember, single malt, what does that mean?
Means one distillery. Malt means barley. Barley.
All
there
barley.
you go.
Okay, so this is a 16-year-old.
Which means not necessarily all of it is 16 years old. It means that the
youngest
barrel is
You
16.
guys have been paying attention. They have one of the best mottos of any whiskey distillery in Scotland. Longmorn.
I like it.
Long no more. Okay, so when you do this with wine, why do you do that?
You do it to
Look like an
Yes.
you
Remember
get-
my snob factor comment in the earlier? I'm just saying.
No, but in all seriousness, like it gets aromatics, right?
Yes,
like
yes,
you
yes.
agitate it
Okay.
a little bit so you get
Now,
this
when you
scent.
do that with wine, which is 12-15% alcohol, you're evaporating alcohol along with some of the chemicals of the wine. You're centering it in the glass.
Right.
And then you're smelling it and trying, don't do that yet. No. Careful. When you do that with a 45% alcohol beverage, you evaporate pure alcohol into the glass.
Okay.
Right? And then if you then shove your nose into the glass and take a huge smell,
You're gonna get nothing
first
but
you'll probably
alcohol.
pass out.
Yeah.
Right? At the very least, your eyes will start watering, you'll start coughing, because you just inhaled pure alcohol vapors.
Through the nose. Responsible science.
That burns.
And at minimum, you'll live a life of regret.
All right.
And you don't want that.
already do that.
Yeah, so how close do you smell whiskey? Close enough. That's the answer to that question. And it has everything to do with experience and tolerance levels. So if you never drink hard liquor, then don't go shoving your nose in the glass. You'll take a big smell, you'll pass out.
Right.
If you are used to drinking hard liquor on a regular basis neat, you can get right up in the glass. You'll see professional whiskey drinkers get right in there and they'll move it around. Now here's what they're doing. Now they're not gonna swirl it around because you're just evaporating alcohol. Two things, one, you keep your mouth open. Now do this first. You bring your nose, the glass to your nose and take short smells. The moment it smells sharp instead of pleasant, that's when you need to stop. And if you can get right in there, then that means you're good at drinking hard liquor, which is
wow.
maybe
It really
good or
does
bad,
make a difference
depending
to
on
have the
your
mouth
preference.
open. I didn't expect that.
Now here's why. You ever driving a car down the road on a highway and one person rolls down a back window like an inch? and the whole car goes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so same thing with your nose. If you have your mouth closed and then you inhale vapors, they just build up in your sinus cavity.
Okay.
Right? And
No
so you
taste
get pure
buds.
alcohol.
Yeah.
You were dropping science on
If
us.
you open your mouth, it's like rolling down another window in the car. Now you get a cross through, right? And you don't get the buffeting in your ears, right? What you're allowing alcohol vapors to pass through. So now you'll smell the whiskey instead of just pure alcohol.
Can we get an episode of one of your series of Whiskey Vault of how to do this and not look like an idiot? Like,
I think there's no getting around that part, right?
You know, just don't be obnoxious. You sit at a bar and you're like, and you're looking around, making eye contact with random patrons.
you're gonna see
Yeah, you're like, hey,
smelling.
hey.
So, okay.
No. You sit quietly. You sit calmly at the bar.
It
like
doesn't
a
go
normal-
in your nose, you daft tosser.
That's right. It's like a normal human being. One nostril will be better than the other depending on the day.
Wow.
Only because of airflow, nothing to do with
Snot.
snot.
Okay, so
Yeah, and snot.
looking at it, right? One of the things we learned with the beerists is that there's the look of it, right?
Yep. Like wine, it has legs.
Yeah.
That's sugar, just like wine. That's sugar content.
Okay, so
Anytime
that's,
you have
that's
a
not the
fermented
oils or
beverage,
anything.
it's sugar and oil.
And when you say legs, that's the attachment to the side
Yeah,
of the
that's the
glass.
dripping down
yeah.
of the, yeah. And all whiskey is going to be a much higher sugar content. I mean, get any wine that's a dessert wine, higher proof, immediately you get higher sugars. You're not going to be able to tell a lot from the legs other than that they're there.
So there's no visual cues between a good one and a bad one.
It's attractive. It makes you
Okay.
feel good on the inside.
And then-
So we're going to smell, but we haven't had any whiskey yet.
No, we haven't.
So far. So we're about to. All right? Now, when you drink a whiskey, remember.
on!
Exactly. So when you drink a whiskey, remember that it took 12 years to make this, or in this case, 16. There's no jello involved in this. We're not throwing it down and there's no woohooing in this room. It's against the rules.
Like, no promises.
Yeah. Yeah. Woo!
Jason's
best.
top is off. He's swinging his sugar around.
Now, this is something and I will always say this, we're about to cross from science into personal preference. I prefer to take my first sip of whiskey as just a nice sip and don't think about it too much, just take a drink. Because I think that is that's how whiskey should be enjoyed. Just drink the damn thing. Quit being so nerdy about it, just drink some damn whiskey. So my first sip of any whiskey is just gonna be, let's just take a drink. Fair enough?
Yeah.
After you
enough.
smell it.
Fair enough.
Now, don't let it sit around, don't do anything with it, just take a drink.
I have that habit to actually take a sip and then let it sit in my
Okay,
mouth
no, that's
for
a
while.
good habit. But I would say do that next, because once you've done that, there's no going back.
I like it because it makes my tongue tingly.
Yeah.
So you're at the bar,
Yeah.
you want to get the most out of your drink. You take the first sip just to set as a palate like stabilizer, right?
Yep.
Like let's just set the bar. And then how do you enjoy the second one?
Okay, now whiskey doesn't change as you drink it. People will talk about how it has this in the beginning and then this mouth feel and then it opens up and then it does this after you swallow. Okay, well, what happens when people describe all these different things that a whiskey does is not that a whiskey's changing in the sense that it wasn't that to begin with and all of a sudden it becomes that later on.
Sure.
What's happening is you're creating a reaction. Remember, this is chemistry.
You're
This is
sort
science.
of guiding your own experience.
Remember when we added water to that whiskey and it completely changed?
Yeah.
And when you pour this whiskey into your mouth, you're about to create another reaction with saliva. And you just heated it up to 98 degrees in seconds. And then after you've swallowed, you're gonna have alcohol evaporation, lingering oil, all of those combine into a certain thing, and now the smells that are hitting your nose are not just coming from the glass, they're also coming from your throat and your mouth. And so you're gonna notice completely different things in the smell. You're gonna notice different things in the taste, and it's not that they weren't there before, it's that you changed how you're experiencing it all of a sudden. So I'm gonna show you something to look for in this whiskey. Ready? This is Longmorn 16 if you can get your hands on some.
Okay.
Good luck. It took me 8 years to track down one.
What if you've got like a chunk of like burrito back there or something? It's like,
Yeah, that'll help.
You're a Philistine.
Or hurt.
You're a savage.
Depending on if it's a good burrito.
Taco Bell episode was your idea.
What I love about this one, and this is where I'm not going to give you how to get there, I'm just going to tell you where you arrive at. When it first hits your mouth, there's these notes of butterscotch that are sort of rounded and smooth and friendly. As soon as it crosses your tongue and the oils start to separate, there's this spike of black pepper that by the time you swallow is gone and vanishes under the remaining sugary aftertaste, right? So you're gonna notice round kind of butterscotch, black pepper, and then leftover mild, kind of friendly herbal kind of notes.
There's a poetry to the way you phrase all that stuff. Is there like different phases of the drinking that we should be attuned to? Think about what pops into your mind as you go through.
Yeah, and I'm gonna hit that in just a second, but let's try that and see.
All right.
I love it. It's always like butterscotch and black pepper. It's never like, you're gonna get a hint of Big Mac first.
Yeah.
And then probably
Gordita. Yeah.
Gordita.
Twizzlers is gonna pop up out of nowhere.
More of red vines than Twizzlers. Yeah, there's a subtle difference.
All right, gentlemen. All right. Is there anything I should be doing in terms of maneuvering my tongue to get the maximum
You can.
experience?
So some guys will swish it around like wine. I find that way too aggressive with 45% alcohol. Now, did you notice that kind of progression?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Now, let's do it again. This time what you're gonna do is keep it in your mouth and make a chewing motion, but don't move your tongue around.
Huh.
You're gonna feel like an idiot. This is one you maybe don't do at the bar.
Okay, all right.
With my mouth open or closed?
All the way to 10. Yeah, you already drank the whiskey. It's still in there. All right, and now you're done.
Wow.
Notice how much more dramatic that got.
That
Yeah.
was
Now, what did we just do? We created a reaction, but in your mouth instead of in the glass or after you've swallowed.
See, I like that better because it's got that bite.
really? Oh no no
Right
no!
there.
It was unpleasant. It was like I was in a face-off, and it's like
So
I
now, which
finally
one of you is
tapped out.
wrong?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously
Shrimp
me.
cocktail.
The shrimp cocktail guy.
No, see, that's how I usually drink whiskey, is that I'll take a drink and then I'll let it sit. And you really feel the bite of it. Right before all of the flavor is gone, then you
you
swallow, you know, but it's...
Now, I will tell you, there's no bad way to drink whiskey. There's a lot of whiskey in a glass. So give your chance to experience all the different things, right? So if you just take a sip first, you can still go back to the let it sit.
Yeah.
But if you let it sit and you've sort of, remember, alcohol activates the pain receptors in your tongue. That's what it does. That's why when someone who's never had alcohol can taste even cooked alcohol in a dish, right? Because your tongue is trying to tell you, hey, that thing's trying to kill you, you idiot, right?
Right.
And you're like, no,
Like, that's
I can-
poison.
I can
Poison.
quit anytime, right? That's all it is.
You
And
shut up, tongue.
Exactly. To drink more whiskey, you're just eventually getting your brain to shut up. But if you let it sit in there and evaporate pure alcohol in your mouth, there's nothing you can do. It just everything comes alive.
Shorts
and
everything
after that,
out.
there's no subtlety.
I definitely noticed, like, after holding onto it in the mouth long enough, the pain goes up and it becomes vaguely unpleasant for me. But then it hits this point where it's like I just feel nothing. Like
Yeah,
the numbness hits,
numb.
and then it's like I'm not getting any taste or anything in there.
Now that we've let that sort of numb, overwhelming, finish this one off
Okay.
because science.
When I tilt one back, I always lift my tongue to let it wash underneath my tongue. Is that just me, or do you guys
I've
do
never
that?
done that before. We'll try it both ways. The answer is science.
Yeah,
Under
of course,
the try it
of course,
both
of course.
ways.
That's the thing to remember when you go through this, is there's no right or wrong way. What you're
No.
doing is you're gauging your own experience.
Yes.
And you're trying to figure out which is the most pleasant way for you to experience this whiskey.
Right. And how does it change?
And that might vary from whiskey to whiskey.
Yes, I was gonna say, and depending on the whiskey. Okay, now we're gonna talk about brain theory. This is where we get super nerdy.
Okay, I'm in.
4 of your 5 senses communicate directly with your left brain first. And their left brain is the one responsible for practical application, language, reality, real things.
Getting stuff
right?
done, yeah.
Action, right? So you can touch something and jerk back and then realize, oh, that was hot. And this is a whole other thing. I'm not gonna go deep into this, but the language of those senses are all objective, relatively speaking. Now, if I said, hey, go in that room and find the guy with the red shirt, as long as I spoke your language, everyone could go do that for me. Even if there's a lot of science that proves you and I see a different red, which is true.
Right.
Right? We could still objectively find the one red shirt.
Within a spectrum.
Unless you're
Yeah.
colorblind or, yeah. So we're talking about fat into the bell curve, right? So smell is the only sense that has no objective language.
You can smell something and suddenly you're back in 7th grade. And
Yes.
you haven't thought about this thought in a million years. Yeah.
The reason is because your sensors in your nose, they bypass critical thinking and they go to your right brain, to the part of your brain responsible for memory and emotion first. Then they reroute to critical thinking. And so you can walk through a room and smell a perfume and look for someone. And then before it occurs to you, that person isn't here, or they're maybe not even alive. But your brain, their first reaction was to look for their face.
Right.
Before your conscious mind went, Wait, that's ridiculous. That's right brain. When you're smelling and drinking things, we are now entering the territory of right brain. Which means if you want to really experience a whiskey, you have to be comfortable with your brain throwing up something in your mind as an answer to what you're smelling that makes absolutely no sense, but that if you give it ground and try to understand why it said that, you'll discover something you didn't know about whiskey.
There really is like a strange courtship with your own other half of the brain that happens, you know, where it's like there's the conscious part of you is deciding how to experience this drink, knowing that you're courting the unconscious part of the brain into experiencing something.
I had a guy who picked up a glass and said, "Grandma." We took about 5 minutes to figure out why his brain said that, and we discovered cinnamon. He smelled cinnamon, and his right brain connects the smell of cinnamon with Grandma's house.
Are we about to do a little therapy here?
We're about to do this, ready?
Okay, all right.
Now, I will tell you, this is an Irish whiskey called Green Spot, which is amazing.
Okay.
It's an amazing whiskey. For years, I drank it, and I smelled shortbread biscuit and caramel, and a little bit of, and that was basically it, a little bit of green apple. So look for that real quick. Don't drink it, but smell it. Look for shortbread biscuit and green apple.
By the way, it's interesting because you can't just inhale. If you inhale, everything whips right past. You got to do that kind of like puff, inhale, and just sort of
Short
feel it.
and then step away. Don't take long smells. Take short smells and then pull it away.
The green apple is really prominent.
Right? Okay, so for 2 years I drank this, and that's all I experienced. Now, set it down for a second. One day I picked this whiskey up, and I was talking to somebody, so I was distracted, which is the perfect opportunity for your right brain to kick into action. And I picked up because my habit when I drink whiskey is, because I'm a nerd, is we'll be sitting around talking and I'll just be doing this, you know, but not thinking about it. And so we're talking and I pick up the glass and smell, and instantly I'm standing on South Padre Island. I'm 12, I'm holding one of those rubber rafts. All of a sudden there were notes of salt, coconut, and what happened was, for me, South Padre was a combination of banana boat sunscreen.
Sure.
That coconut flavor.
Yeah.
Right? Dried salt water on hot skin.
Regret?
Regret. A life of regret. And that was it. And so for the first time, I smelled coconut in this whiskey. And then when I tasted it, I tasted salt water. That's your right brain talking. Now I can narrow those down to an actual thing. But my right brain didn't say coconut and salt water. My right brain said 12 years old, South Padre Island.
So I stuck my finger in some cookie dough, and the moment it hit my mouth, all of a sudden, I thought Magic the Gathering. Because when I was a freshman in college, I got obsessed
We're not getting laid.
I got obsessed with eating raw cookie dough and playing Magic the Gathering. And it's amazing how that stuff links in a totally unconscious way.
Yes. Now pick this back up, smell it, we're gonna drink it. Now this time, instead of green apple, look for coconut and salt water. Cheers.
Man, this is
It's right there. It's yeah.
Right?
This is a fantastic example of priming. Like when you prime your brain to look for a certain thing going into it,
will often
it
find
definitely appears. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the language of tasting and smell and science and right brain. You ever watch a show and you see an actor that you recognize and you know their name and you saw them in a movie last week, but you can't remember who they are?
Yep.
And
You
it's
get
so-
a restraining order if you try to smell them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's this uncomfortable feeling of
Sure.
like, I know who that is. That uncomfortable, gray, foggy feeling, that's your left brain trying to come to terms with your right brain. That's the world you live in when you smell and taste things.
All right, so if we're gonna distill, as it were, all of this down to a few fundamentals.
See what you did there.
If you want to get the most out of your whiskey, what are the things you have to do?
Take your time.
Take your time.
Don't be afraid of looking like an idiot.
Yeah, which means sniffing
Yeah.
and getting the nose in there. Yeah.
Yeah, try smelling it
Open
mouth
your
open,
mouth.
mouth closed,
Right.
both, because you'll change it, right? Move it around. Take your first sip, relax. Take your next one, let it hang out a little bit.
So first sip, don't judge. Second sip is where you really
let's
settle
explore
into
this
it.
thing a little bit, and maybe add some water.
All right, give us a proper toast.
May those who love us, and may those who hate us, may God turn their hearts. And if he cannot turn their hearts, may he turn their ankles, so that we may know them by their limping.
I like that.